and archive this whole contribution. I mean, what I'm saying is it didn't happen yesterday. It's happened over centuries. Okay, so we need to really kind of see how we can bring in all the information and put it together so that we don't see LGBT people as freaks or abnormal or somebody who has just come from US or Europe. So where did the early people meet? Where were the areas they met? And kind of groups they formed, the first gay newsletter, the first lesbian book, and also same-sex literatures which existed even before, like Kama Sutra talks about LGBT people there. You have various other forms, and also in sculptures, okay? We have temple sculptures. So all this have not been recorded enough, that's all I'm saying. They have been recorded. Now, so that's one of the projects which I've been working on for the last 2 years called Project Bolo. Project Bolo, what we did was we kind of interviewed 20 people from 4 cities, Mumbai, Pune, Lucknow, and Delhi, and they were transgenerational. Somebody was 70, somebody was 30. So you get a perspective of what it means to be gay, lesbian, transgender in India from somebody who's older and somebody who's younger. Now, what we talked about in this particular interview, these are video interviews, okay? We talked about like, where did they grow up, what kind of family milieu, what did their parents, where did they work, and how did they fall in love, how did they I mean, what happened when they, in the 1960s, when they came to know that I'm gay? How scared they were? Did they were able to talk to anybody at all? Did they meet somebody? Was there a group which helped them? And also the link to that is always this big question about HIV/AIDS. A lot of people from the LGBT community are prone to HIV/AIDS. So some of these issues are being dealt with, and one of the big issue with gay, lesbian, transgender people is coming out. What it means coming out means like getting up and saying I'm gay, or getting up and saying I'm lesbian. A lot of people question why is it important? It's important because most of the time their fears and their problems come out of the fact that they're hiding their sexuality. So, and also these interviews kind of give us an idea of what it is. Okay, so these were the 20 people from different cities who came out and said very openly, yes, I'm gay, I'm lesbian, I'm bisexual, I'm transgender. But what is important is it's not just about their sexuality. They are professionals in their own might. Somebody has written a book, which is a kind of really best-selling book on same-sex behavior. And there are people who are poets. There's a transgender activist, Lakshmi, who was in Big Boss recently. And you have Raj Rao, who is a poet. There's a photographer, Sunil Gupta. So all these people, and plus we have people working in corporate sector, like Parmesh Sani works with Godrej, okay? And he used to work with Mahindra. So it's not that they're all similar. They're all diverse. They're very different. And for the first time, we talk about what are the different kinds of achievements they have, apart from just being who they are. So that's what like these videos, in fact, 20 of them have been set up on projectbolo.com, where people can see these interviews live. It's free of cost. It's like an open source in that sense. Okay, and the longer versions are available on DVD. A transcript is coming out as a book. Okay, and also they've been showing, the films have been showing at film festivals and etc. So we are talking about them in different forums. Okay. Now, just one of the screenshots of that. Okay. Now, coming to what we're talking about today, like Wikipedia and Wikimedia. What I want to relate is Project Bolo with Wikipedia and Wikimedia. If you click today on, say, Indian LGBT in Wikipedia, you basically get LGBT persons. There are around kind of 20 of them here. And a lot of them are not even living in India at this point of time. They were born in India or something. There's hardly any connection. And not enough information is available on any of these people. Like, I mean, somebody like if you say Rahul Patil, there's just one line on him. Okay, Zoltan Parag, there are 2 lines. So I'm going to show you some screenshots. Like Salim Kidwai is a very, very well-known author, historian, okay, and a professor. He has a huge body of work. But what we see is just like 3 lines. And we have Nishit Saran, who's a filmmaker. Okay, he has done tremendous film which has gone all over the world at different festivals. Again, we see a very, very small screenshot of him. Why is there no information about any of these people? Now, whereas what it should look like, a person's page should look like this, like a Manav's page is complete. It has this where he was born, early life coming out, and we have got charitable activities, references, external link. I mean, it's complete. You know that like this is a person who has done something, whom we want to read about. And all the 20 people whom I talked about earlier, they are people who are very interesting, but it's just that nobody has documented them, nobody has put them together. So I just want to compare these 2 screenshots, and I really think that we should go ahead and try to make a bigger. So why Wikipedia and Wikimedia should talk about LGBT issues? Because I think as soon as I Google anything, the first thing which I will see is a Wikipedia page of anything or a reference. As actually, I think yesterday somebody was speaking, Tony Sant, I didn't come, but I just saw in his article, that's an obvious shortcut. It may not be true information, but it's a very easy shortcut. I know there are a lot of issues with most of the pages. There are factual mistakes, because I remember that I checked out a Shyam Benegal page for an introduction to Shyam Benegal at my festival, and I read out from Wikipedia, and it was all wrong. So I'm sorry. So people, there are problems. So it needs to be corrected. And other thing is like, cross-referencing and citations, that is important, and not many people who kind of work on Wikipedia pages know this very much. How do we improve this? Now, this is something I need to just, it's a personal thing, which I would just want to share. There's a page, Sridhar Rangayan, okay, where they just put that up in the discussion page called LGBT. Nowhere in the article does it say that Sridhar Rangayan is gay, okay? So there are no references, and one of my trustees has written, Rangayan is gay, all trustees of the Humsafar Trust are gay. So this big long discussion which happened, and I don't think it's still inconclusive. So how do you use citations and references which are accurate? And also the other big thing is about, you put a link today to an online page or an online article, and then suddenly that online article is off the thing. So the reference is gone. So how do you keep that going around? Okay, then for me, quickly kind of winding up almost is like the way forward. How do we increase and enrich the documentation? That's one question which I'm bringing to this forum because I'm not capable of it. I've done Project Polo, I want other people to take it forward, which is one of the main ideas. Then how do we bring all the information under one umbrella and integrate them so that the Indian LGBT movement can be seen with clarity? Again, if you see the page on homosexuality in India or Indian gay movement, they're very scattered information. There's not enough information or pictures or videos which are put together so that we get an idea. Everything just kind of talks about what I talked in the beginning, section 377. That is not really the defining all, And most importantly, how do we involve the Indian LGBT community? The Indian LGBT community comprises of youngsters who are into various activities. They are computer savvy, they have the knowledge, they're all the time on the computer. How do they really kind of motivate them to work on this, That's something I need to throw up and have a discussion about. And that's what the presentation is about. How do you make this uncommon knowledge, I call it, it's not unconventional, I said. Okay, so it's uncommon knowledge. How do we make it common, primarily? That's that. All right, Arasto. So I think we have a Q&A after the other presentations, I think, so I'm here.
Thank you, Shridhar. And as the other presentations go along, I think you'll see the connections between different people who are speaking today. So we now have Manish, followed by Shiju, followed by me, who will be talking about different aspects of unconventional or uncommon knowledge, which we'll then wrap up with about 15 or 20 minutes at the end where we have a question and answer session. Rather than doing it after each speaker, we'll do it after all speakers. Thank you.
The three of us will do a panel. Myself, Shiju and Achal will do a panel on, we'll do a collective presentation on issues with the current alternative forms, exploring alternative forms of citation on Wikipedia. Those of you who were there for Tony's talk in the main hall, like in the convocation hall, would have noticed that he emphasized something called the 3 pillars of Wikipedia, right? Which and among them were no original research, the neutral point of view, and verifiability. Now, one of the core principles of Wikipedia is neutral point of view, right? Which means that what Wikipedia describes should be, should be largely at least free of biases and cover all possible perspectives on a particular issue. And for this reason, we have a related policy called no original research, which sort of maps onto something else called reliable sources. So when you when you create an article in Wikipedia, you add citations to the article, right? You're expected to provide sources for the information that you provide. Now the thing with Wikipedia, and what I'm going to show through my presentation, is that the kind of sources that Wikipedia states as reliable sources, right, are a kind of paradigm which exclude a lot of different sources from different kinds of sources. So basically what happens is that Wikipedia, through its reliable sources policy, privileges certain kinds of sources as reliable sources, and all other kinds of sources are not reliable sources, right? And because of the way these reliable sources exist, right, today geographically and otherwise, we have a mass of knowledge, or we have a mass of reliable sources of information in certain parts of the world for certain kinds of information. We don't have that information in a lot of other aspects, and this causes problems which in turn will affect the neutral point of view. So I'll explain how this works. So one of the core policies is regarding identifying reliable sources, right? And the policy is very simply about that you need to have reliable published sources, ensuring that minority and majority views have appeared in these sources are covered, right? So what is emphasized here is are reliable and published sources, which is mostly secondary sources of information, which are your books, articles in journals, and other such information, right? What Wikipedia discourages as a consequence of this, and if you go further down the page, you'll see that, right? So there are questionable sources, and so a lot of what is discouraged includes things like blogs, primary sources, self-published sources, and also the entire gamut of what we call today the new media or social media, right? Now, why? Now this might seem a very nice thing in terms of how it promotes verifiability, and as in these are like these are reliable in a conventional sense of the term, right? It's a book, it's been peer reviewed, and so on and so forth. But why is this a problem in certain situations? So let me start by explaining why having only these particular kinds of sources is a problem. So first of all, books, right? Now, if you look at the availability of the printed word, right? And this is something that Shiju will come to later on in more detail. You will notice that books are not available in all languages, on all subjects, and across all cultures or communities. So a majority of printed information is as of now available in what we call the Western world, in the English and certain European languages, like in those areas. What we call the global south, right, which includes several parts of Asia, Africa, and several developing countries, don't have access to a repository of documented information in the form of books or journal articles, right? And as Shiju's presentation will demonstrate later, there are a lot of things that are not recorded in this manner. Like, you don't have books written about them. These things are not written about in books, journals, and all, right? They're documented in other ways. That's one thing, right? The second thing is what we privilege as reliable is most kinds of media sources, right? And why is that a problem? Because the media in itself, and those of you who attended the presentation in the first session in the morning would have gotten an idea of that, right? The media is not necessarily neutral, is not necessarily unbiased, is not necessarily free of its prejudices, right? If you heard Arnab Goswami speak and explain his idea of neutrality, right? So in situations where either the media itself is biased, or it's censored, or it's state-owned or something. So for instance, the newspapers in China, right, which are all state-censored and state-controlled. Or for instance, in cases where the media itself blanks out the news, right? And there was a very interesting controversy that took place on Wikipedia itself sometime last year, right? And this article, the Radia tapes controversy, I'm sure most of you have heard of the controversy in general, right? So the main problem with the Radia tapes controversy was immediately after the incident, like the first incident was broken out by Open Magazine, right, which is an online published magazine. What happened was that there was pretty much a media blackout of the entire issue. You couldn't find, if you searched for Radia tapes or anything of that sort, you would barely find a source in any Indian newspaper or on any Indian television channel's website or anywhere of that sort, right? This continued for almost 3 weeks, and only after that did the matter slowly start to be reported, and that too in bits and pieces, right? The only information that was available was an Outlook article, the Open Magazine, and the original tapes themselves, right? But the original tapes were again original sources, which were, as in their primary sources, which the use of which was directly discouraged. So during the creation of this article, right, at that point of time, obviously there were active Wikipedians who were creating this article. So during the creation of this article, this caused a lot of trouble and discussion that happened. So there were two very prominent editors. Just look at the table of contents. Like, this was the set of this was a set of concerns that occurred at the time this news broke, right? And So the two prominent contributors were Atul Chitnis and Tinu Cherian. Tinu is also here at the conference today. So they had this long and detailed discussion which goes on for a long time to see where it concerned the mentioning of Barkhadat in these tapes. It concerned the naming of the article. The fact that the social media was reporting this as a very widely publicized issue. One of the problems that occurred at this time was that a lot of people raised the objection that the media isn't even reporting. This is not even reported in the media. It's not significant. It's not a major issue. And this was all over the social media. If you were on Twitter or on Facebook at that point of time, there were like groups, communities, discussions, hashtags, like I think Radia tapes or Barkha Gate and all that were trending topics for weeks together, right? Unfortunately, Wikipedia's policies did not permit any of that information to be used here, right? And this caused, and eventually most of the article was written by relying on international newspapers like The Guardian and some other places where they somehow managed to scrape together sources and then put that together, right? Now what is, okay, this is one sort of situation which we have actually faced on Wikipedia. The other sort of situation is something like currently what's going on, what happened recently in the Arab Spring, right? Or so the protests at Tahrir Square or the protests in Syria or Libya or anywhere of that sort, right? Where there was government force used to try and suppress the news or reporting of these protests, right? So most of the mainstream media were either muzzled or not able to give an accurate picture of the protests. And a lot of the information which was being broadcast live either on Twitter or people creating Facebook pages and doing stuff anonymously on the web, blogs and other things which were spreading the word through social media, right? So those are all situations that our current knowledge mechanism, right? Sourcing mechanism is not designed to cover. Like all of these slip through the cracks. And what is happening in the process is that we are losing knowledge, right? We're losing access to valuable knowledge that exists there, but we're unable to document it because of these problems, right? And when Wikipedia claims to be, or the goal of Wikipedia is to be the sum of all human knowledge, right? To spread knowledge everywhere. This is a serious, according to me, a serious impediment in this entire situation. The other issue, of course, is with regard to these unconventional sources, right? If you use a blog or something, how do you verify it, and how do you know it's reliable, right? There is already a process in place for the current set of sources. So if you feel a website is suspicious or if you feel a book is suspicious, there is a notice board. There's a reliable sources notice board. There are experienced editors who discuss stuff. You can put in stuff for review and determine it, right? As in what I'm saying is there are filtration processes available where you can check the verifiability, and something that's blatantly, as in a lot of random blogs that probably aren't worthy of being mentioned as sources in an article could probably be done away with. But when you have Twitter being used as, so when you have something like Twitter being used as the basis for news reports, right? Yesterday, in fact, day before yesterday, if any of you have been reading the newspapers, you will know that Aishwarya Rai Bachchan gave birth to a baby, right? And media houses based that information on a tweet by Abhishek Bachchan, where he said, "I'm a proud father to a baby girl," or something to that effect. Right? Now, if the mainstream media can use these items as reliable sources, right, and it's a verified Twitter handle, etc.,